All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're doing well on this day of Yom HaZikaron, this day of tremendous reflection and sadness, thinking about the sacrifice that's been made on behalf of our people and so many connections that people, even in our own community, have to the soldiers of the IDF and victims of terror. And it's no small day. If we feel connected here, can only imagine what it's like in Israel. Very transformative day. If you've ever been in Israel for Yom HaZikaron, it's really something special. Actually, I'll share in the first second or two what I shared this morning in shul, which is a Rashi, so we can get it in under the umbrella of our Rashi share today, but is really a reflection of Yom HaZikaron. The beginning of the parsha, we have the mitzvah of the Korban Shlamim, and the Torah tells us over here that shlamim, that when you bring a korban shlamim, it has to be a lirtzonchem, according to your desire. And Rashi spells out that really what the mitzvah that the Torah is singling out over here is about pigul. It's about lack of intent or improper intent when bringing the korban shlamim. And so I thought about it, and I really reflected on the fact that the passage or the pasuk about the korban shlamim here is really reflective of three themes: the theme of sacrifice, it's a korban; the theme of peace, it's a korban shlamim; and the theme of intent, l'rtzonchem. And those are the exact three themes that I feel very, very strongly today. We reflect upon the tremendous sacrifice that our soldiers, citizens made with the intent of peace. And ultimately, that's the goal. It's the goal of having an army. It's the goal of having the IDF. It's the goal of life in Israel, is to create a peaceful environment where we can live in our homeland. And unfortunately, in many instances, they were robbed of the opportunity to continue down that path. And so we can only hope and pray that Hashem will bring us to that time of peace and bring us to that moment in which we can live more peacefully with our neighbors and ultimately see that the sacrifice that was made by these soldiers over the last many, many years, I think they start counting the number, close to 29,000 victims of terror and fallen members of the IDF. I think they counted starting from 1860. So I can't even say over the last 70 or 80 years, but even more than that, the sacrifices that have been made on behalf of the state of Israel, its establishment, and its continued existence should never be in vain. We continue to see peace in our time, hopefully, Ritz Hashem. But there was another Rashi I did want to do today as well, not connected to Yom HaZikaron. I'll bring that up on my screen. That is a Rashi from today, from the fourth Aliyah. The Torah tells us about the treatment of the ger, treatment of the convert. When a convert or proselyte lives in your midst, in your land, you're not allowed to harass him in any way. Lo sono, so it's the mitzvah of ona'as divarim, of not afflicting him, paining him, harassing him, cheating him in any way in terms of even our words. Rather, ke'ezrach mikem yeh lachem hager hagar itchem. This ger hagar itchem should be ke'ezrach mikem, should be like one of your own citizens. V'ahavta lo kamocha, you should love him like yourself. Why? One of the many instances in the Torah where the Torah commands us an X, because we knew the experience of the ger the way that what we felt when we were in Mitzrayim. So what's interesting here about the psukim is actually the Torah is telling us two things: lo sonuoso and behavta lo kamocha, a lav and an aseh. These are both lavs and asehs that already exist for every other Jew, right? We have a lav of unas dvarim by other Jews. They're not allowed to cheat a person or ask a person with our words. And we have the mitzvah of Ahavta l'reach kamocha. We also have v'ahavta. We have lo sonu and v'ahavta. The fact that both are being repeated over here is the specific added mitzvah to be even more careful in these matters when it comes to a ger because of their vulnerable status. So it's like a separate doubling up of the mitzvah, which shows us just how important it is in the context of the ger, which highlights the larger treatment of a ger in general, even beyond the specific parameters of these mitzvahs. And that larger treatment of the ger is how the Torah frames it here. You should treat the ger in the totality of things, even aside from these particular mitzvahs, in the correct way, especially because you understand the experience of being a stranger in a different land, in a different context. So, as Rashi explains over here, lo sonuoso, the first mitzvah of onas dvarim. Onas dvarim. What does that mean? What does it mean to harass someone with our words? Lo tomar lo, for example, the most common example you might find when it comes to a ger in specific, as opposed to other Jews, is a person would say to them, ah, emesh, Haisa Oved Azara, Achshava Tabalu Motora, Shenitna Mipi Agura. Yesterday you were worshiping idols, and today you think you're somebody? You think you've come to learn Torah, the word of the living God? I mean, really, come on, who are you? Right? It's like tormenting them about their past, about who they were, demoting them in some way, saying they're not valuable, they're not worthy of the experience of coming to be a Jew. That would be a form of verbal harassment, which would be forbidden. That's ona'as dvarim. And that's what's being singled out over here. Again, Rashi has an interesting comment here, sorry about that, about the end of the Pasuk Gerim Ha'isem, which is the larger frame of not doing to the ger the things that we know and we experienced ourselves when we were gerim in Mitzrayim. He says, points to a larger principle, which has nothing to do with the ger or this particular situation, but rather, mum shibecha al tomar lechavercha. What we learn from this principle is when you have a blemish in yourself, you shouldn't point it out in others. That's obviously applicable here. We were gerim. It's not really a blemish, but it's something that we experienced that was on the negative side. So we shouldn't point that out to others and highlight that for them in their experience either. But I think the lesson here that Rashi is trying to draw is much broader than that. It's something that applies to all of us in different contexts in life, not just with the ger, but in general. When you know something is particularly painful, even though we have the instinct sometimes to point it out in somebody else, we should hold ourselves back and understand what the experience must be like for them based on what it was like for us. It's as close as you can get to walking in someone else's shoes. We could never fully feel what it is to live someone else's life or experience their experiences. But when you have something particular that happened to you and you can relate, then all the more so, you shouldn't try to put the person that you know had that similar experience in a situation that's painful because you particularly know what it must feel like. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too, everybody.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Rabbi.